Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Thanks to our founding partners for their foresight in helping us transform the way conversations start. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. Runyon Saltzman Incorporated, RSE, marketing, advertising, and public relations creating integrated communications committed to improving lives. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. I want you to think about something for a moment. It's a feeling I'd like you to evoke, maybe even an image. It could be from grammar or high school, but you'll get it when I explain. There was something you wanted to be a part of, maybe picking sides for a team of some sort or a club you wanted to join. Maybe it was just to be a part of the cool kids. Remember that anxiety, maybe even the feeling of rejection if you didn't get chosen? Possibly the fear of getting picked, and then what? That can be a terrifying experience. Now add in the fact that maybe it was a new experience for you with all new people in a new neighborhood. You're starting to get a visceral sense of it all? Pretty uncomfortable for me as I reminisce about my own personal situations when that would occur. Now take that sense and imagine it in a completely foreign country, in a different language and culture and maybe even belief system. And you're not alone. You're with your family that you're responsible for. Worse yet, you may be running from a group as opposed to wanting to be involved with them. It's even possible you were taken unwillingly and now you've been recovered, as in a human trafficking situation. This is what many of our immigrants and refugees are faced with every single day. Can you imagine the relief of finding there is someplace you can go to get the support in your own language with people who understand your culture, your faith, your traditions? Well, that's what this episode of the Nonprofit Podcast is going to address. I'm speaking with Jessie Mabry, CEO of Opening Doors, an organization that supports our immigrants on their journey to self-sufficiency in our community. No stranger herself to the nonprofit space, Jessie has served with the Peace Corps and held leadership roles in a variety of nonprofit and social service agencies that represented concerns all over the world. She's now been with Opening Doors for over 5 years and is about to share with us the significance of what this over 30-year-old organization has represented to those in our region to provide stability and a sense of belonging. Jessie, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. You know, many of the organizations that we talk with have a name that's really descriptive of the organization. Yours, Opening Doors, is very visual, but not necessarily descriptive to the mission and purpose of what the organization does.
Sure.
Can you tell us, give us a little history about the organization and what it is you do?
Yeah. We got started in 1993 as an outreach ministry of a local church that was walking alongside newly arriving refugees. At that time, folks were coming here from the former Soviet Union. And that sort of volunteer group worked together for about 10 years and then incorporated as a 501c3 in the early 2000s. And that's when we got our official name of Opening Doors. And, I like to think about it in a couple of different ways. One is, opening doors to new opportunities, right? Opening doors to the next steps on the journey of immigrants, refugees, and survivors of trafficking. And I also think about it in terms of neighbor welcoming neighbor and opening doors to our neighbors.
Sure, here you are in the neighborhood. Let's bring some cookies or a greeting of some sort.
Yeah.
And either open our doors to or your door to us.
Yeah.
Who are these new people?
Absolutely.
Yeah, in so many ways, too. In over 30 years, you've been serving a large constituent, and I would imagine that once it got started and the word was out about the organization and the help that you provided, it connected with the immigrants and the refugees from the source. And you said predominantly from Russia initially?
At that time, yeah, in the early days.
Who is it you see today coming across?
Right. So over our 30-year history, we've welcomed folks from different parts of the world, sort of as conflicts break out in other countries, that forces people to seek safety, and
Right.
eventually they end up here in Northern California. Today, and for the past few years, we've been welcoming predominantly Afghan refugees coming to the US since the Taliban has taken over. Our sort of our second largest group would probably be Ukrainians
Hmm.
coming here because of the war in Ukraine. And then we also see a really large number of folks from sort of the Northern Triangle countries: El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Venezuela is coming. We're seeing that more and more frequently as well. We do see other nationalities as well, but those are probably the most common right today.
Understood perfectly from the standpoint of the conflicts in a
Yeah,
lot of those countries.
right.
What about the change, if you've seen a change or have you seen a change pre-pandemic to post-pandemic?
hmm I don't know. Well, Afghanistan and Ukraine all sort of happened around the same time that that was happening. I don't know that we've seen necessarily a that the results of the pandemic had any influence on the particular populations that we are welcoming, but I think we did see that the populations that we are working with were impacted by the pandemic just the same way as many other low income communities. So
Mhm.
in the first 6 weeks of the pandemic, a lot of the folks that we work with lost their jobs or couldn't work because their kids were home from school,
Sure,
so they were impacted in that way. And then moving forward, I think we've really seen these increasing challenges in the housing market across the country, but
sure.
really in this area as well. And so the populations that we serve have been really impacted by that as well.
Roughly 3,700 people served last year
Mhm.
is how many people you work with. That's
Mhm.
an enormous number of people.
Mhm.
What does the organization look like? How do you accommodate that many people?
Yeah. Our organization is, I mean, I biased, admittedly, but our
And
staff
rightfully so.
our staff are just amazing, dedicated, committed members of their communities. Cultural competency, linguistic competency is really
Mhm.
foundational to our work. So we have a staff of a little over 70, and together we speak more than a dozen languages. And it takes a lot of work. I like to say, if we were a taco truck wanting to make the very best tacos, we'd buy organic, vine ripened tomatoes and we'd make our own tortillas. But we're a human services organization,
Mhm.
and the quality input is our staff. That is how we deliver on the mission, and our staff really do an amazing job.
Let's talk a little bit about that mission and the scope of service,
Hmm.
because it's really broad.
Hmm.
It's really broad, and you're not only immigrants, but refugees, but trafficked people as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
And sometimes you think, well, those how do those go together?
Right.
So I just asked you 2 questions in one. Let's start with just
Yeah.
the 3 groups that you service most
Hmm.
and talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I like to say that we are agnostic as to how folks get to Sacramento. We just want to help them be successful once they're here.
Mhm.
So, whether they come through the refugee resettlement process, whether they come here seeking asylum, or maybe they're a DACA recipient, whether they come to the US uh, as a trafficking victim or are trafficked once they are here, we are really
Mm.
agnostic as to how folks get here. We just want to help them thrive once they are here.
Now, the scope of services
Yeah.
that you provide to this really eclectic group of people that
Mhm.
come in.
Mhm. Yeah. Our mission is to enrich communities by supporting immigrants, refugees, and survivors of trafficking on their path to stability, self sufficiency, and belonging. And we do have 5 program areas: refugee programs, health programs, immigration legal services, survivors of human trafficking program, and
Mhm.
economic prosperity. But ultimately, it all comes down to that stability, self sufficiency, and belonging. And we all need those things, regardless of your immigration status or background. So, stability is, where am I going to sleep tonight? Do I have food that I can feed my kids? I'm having an asthma attack. What do I do? It's
Mm-hmm.
stability are those very basic things. Typically, to sort of generalize a bit, it's really our refugee clients and our survivors of trafficking clients who are in that need to meet their immediate basic needs. Could be others as well, but that's where we sort of that's a large function of those programs. Self sufficiency is you've met your basic needs, but now you need to make sure that you can sort of integrate into your community, right? Getting a driver's license, getting enrolled in ESL classes, making sure your kids are enrolled in school.
For the benefit of
English.
ESL.
Thank you very much. I thought I was going to skip all the acronyms, but one slid through there. Learning English.
Yes.
Um,
English is a second language.
English is a
Yeah.
second language. You know, working with a job center or finding employment, any of those types of things would be in that sort of self sufficiency
Mm-hmm.
place. And then belonging is really complex and nuanced, right? I like to think of belonging as being when does someone start thinking of Sacramento as home? At some point in the journey that will start happening, right? And the support that can happen alongside that oftentimes is related to mental health support, regardless of the path that led someone to end up in our lobby. There's probably a lot of trauma involved.
Sure.
And usually people are not really ready to address that trauma until they have their basic needs met and some of those self sufficiency pieces.
And you probably have some cultural stigma too to address the trauma
Absolutely.
with mental health, mental wellness.
Absolutely. Yes, we do sometimes have to be a bit creative in how we package sort of
Yeah.
some of that mental health support. Um, but belonging can also look like applying for citizenship. Belonging can look like opening a business. There are lots of different ways to support people all along their journey.
Mm-hmm. Legal services,
Hmm.
attorneys,
Hmm.
healthcare services,
Hmm.
physicians, and medical
Hmm.
care teams. Are they actually employees or are they services that you employ outside?
So I'll answer those questions one at a time because it's a
Okay.
bit different for the two. In terms of legal services, we have a legal services team. We have attorneys on staff. We have legal assistants, and we provide immigration legal services. Many people don't know this, but immigration court is civil court. So there is no right to representation.
Hmm.
So if someone is going through the perhaps applying for asylum or something like that through the immigration court system, if they don't get representation, if they can't afford the thousands of dollars that a private sector attorney will charge, if they can't get services from an organization like Opening Doors or someone else providing pro bono, they go through it on their own. They go through it on their own if they're a minor.
Attempting to represent themselves?
Yes. If they're a child, if they don't speak English, if they're not literate,
Hmm.
doesn't matter. There's no right to representation. So there's an incredible need in our community for pro bono or even low cost immigration legal services.
Mm-hmm.
We we unfortunately turn away for every case that we can accept. We, depending on the type of case, we turn away 20 to 40 people who are eligible
Would
for
have
our
been my next
services.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many don't get the service?
Most people will not get the service. And there's a lot of data that shows that the outcomes, as to be expected, are much better when someone is represented by counsel.
Sure.
So we do have attorneys on staff and legal professionals on staff to provide those services. For healthcare, we actually contract with various different therapists or social workers or things along those lines. We have in the past hired counselors or therapists ourselves, but we actually find that by having a sort of bench of contract therapists, we're able to provide greater language diversity
Mm-hmm.
in that and better respond to the needs of our population. So we're always looking for therapists that speak Spanish, Russian, Farsi, those sorts of things.
Hmong, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then we also, in our health program, do some healthcare navigation. People may have insurance, but how do you access it? How do you get to that provider? How do you ask for an interpreter? How do you advocate for your child at the doctor's office? Those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Which makes perfectly good sense. You're
Hmm.
here everything's new. And you
Exactly.
may have Medi-Cal,
Hmm.
you may have something to support you, but
Yeah,
you're not even sure where to start.
exactly.
You know, I've got the potential for the care.
Hmm.
So is opening doors an opportunity for them really in a full service sense from, I'll say, start not to finish because you're going to guide them
Hmm.
through other collaborative efforts? Who do you find that you work most with?
So I like to think of our work as helping people access resources to which they're entitled. That might be enrolling your child at school. That might be like the example you gave, getting healthcare
Mhm.
service through Medi-Cal.
Simple as a
Um,
driver's license?
exactly. And we want to get folks to the place where they are able to navigate their community and advocate for themselves.
Mhm.
So we will often work with people for a period of time and then they go off and then they may come back. So we
Mm.
may pick them up at the airport if they're a newly arriving refugee and work with them for 90 days as they secure their first apartment and get their kids enrolled in school and things like that. And then we close the case and they keep working, stocking shelves at Walmart and walking their kids to the bus stop and things like that. And a little while later, mom might say, I'm ready to try to get some of that therapy now. I'm ready to try that. So we enroll her in services, provide some mental health support.
So you've actually built a relationship with the
Exactly.
family at that point to
Hmm.
where whomever in the family
Hmm.
is comfortable coming back to the
Yeah.
organization to say, "We're stuck."
We're ready for the next step, in our integration into our community here in Sacramento.
That's outstanding.
Hmm.
Give me a success story.
Yeah.
Tell me, somebody who came through the program and the next thing you know, they're thriving.
Yeah. Um, it does take a little more time than the next thing you know, but it
Thank you.
does
I
it does
appreciate
happen.
that. It could be 3, 4, 5 years down the
Exactly,
line.
exactly. The client that comes to mind at first is a man named Mohammed. He and his wife came here as refugees from Afghanistan because of Mohammed's employment in Afghanistan. He was at risk when the Taliban took over, and they came to Sacramento, and after some time Muhammad was interested in starting a business. So he was connected to our economic prosperity program, where we are able to provide loans and business counseling to refugee and immigrant entrepreneurs. We do this through in language, which is one of the key pieces that differentiates
Oh,
these
wow.
services
So
for
all the
us.
financing and the specifics are
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
language.
So our economic prosperity team speaks Russian, Ukrainian, Dari, Farsi, Arabic, Urdu, Pashto, and Vietnamese.
United Nations.
Yeah, I mean it when we say
Almost
when I
United
say we
Nations, a
we
few
speak
not in there, but
we speak over a dozen languages, but absolutely. So we're able to, do the lending process in language, but also understand what kind of licenses do you need? What kind of
mhm.
insurance do you need? All of those aspects of starting a business and provide that one-on-one counseling to an entrepreneur. So Mohammed got his store up and running. It's a family business. They sell fabric and they also do, one of a kind tailoring. And a little while later, he and his wife decided to pay it forward and started offering classes to Afghan women, teaching them tailoring skills so they might make a little bit of money at home.
How neat is that?
Yeah.
And just to think that somebody who landed here some years ago, however they got here, for whatever
Hmm.
reason they got here, to be able to take and incorporate, that spirit of entrepreneurship
Hmm.
in another country, in
Hmm.
another language, in
Right.
another financial and socioeconomic system, and be able to succeed,
Hmm.
which is the entire basis of our immigration
Right.
to begin with.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how my grandparents came here, right? My grandparents um, fled Germany between the two world wars. There was a
Mhm.
lot of poverty and there weren't a lot of opportunities. And they came here, and my grandfather started a gardening business.
Mhm.
And it was a way to support his family and give back to the community. And we see that same story repeated throughout our country.
Well, and as our populations grow in particular niche,
Hmm.
whether it be Russian, Ukrainian, whatever,
Hmm.
that community then has somebody to service
Yeah.
those particular cultural needs.
Yeah.
I'm sure the fabric and the dress and
Mhm.
everything that they were providing
Yep.
was unique to the culture.
And it ends up being this system that sort of renews itself over and over again. We see that Sacramento is home to one of the largest Afghan communities in the United States.
Mhm.
It's estimated that 1 out of every 9 Afghans or Afghan Americans living in the US lives in the greater Sacramento area. And so when
It's better than
Afghans are coming
10%.
here, I know
Amazing.
it is amazing. And it's an incredibly rich, strong community. And when Afghans are coming to the US, are housing prices high? Yeah. Are there
That's an
challenges
understatement,
here?
yes.
Absolutely. But is there a bakery where you can buy bread from home baked fresh every day?
Mhm.
Can you chit chat with other moms at school pickup in your own language? Can you go to Muhammad's store when you're getting ready for a family wedding and get just the right outfit? Those things make all the difference.
Yeah. We are in a somewhat tumultuous time with immigration,
Hmm.
and not to touch on the political elements of it, but I think the perception of the
Hmm.
country as a whole right now is there's a great deal of concern.
Hmm.
How do you address that in your non-immigrant population
Hmm.
with people that are saying, well, this is an issue?
Right. I think we are undeniably seeing this become a hot button issue at a national level. One of the things that I find hard to reconcile is that the data around the contribution of immigrants and refugees does not align with the narrative that we
Hmm.
see, right? We see that immigrants and refugees, for example, start businesses at 2 and 4 percentage points more than the US born population.
And I can appreciate that because
Hmm.
they need to serve their community.
Mhm, absolutely. But the immigrants and refugees contribute in so many other ways. There were 40,000 DACA recipients working in hospitals on the front lines of the COVID pandemic.
Hmm.
There's just a number of ways that immigrants and refugees are contributing to our communities and really making us all better off. Another statistic is that within 5 years, refugees have paid $20,000 more in taxes than they use in public benefits. Many of us come to this work because of our faith background or our moral values or something along those lines. But even if that's not motivating, there is a real economic rationale to support this work. That said, I really do feel incredibly lucky to be doing this work in Sacramento. I think our specific community is incredibly proud of our diversity. I think that
Hmm.
whenever I tell anyone that doesn't already know that 1 out of every 9 Afghans in the US is here, they light up a little bit because they're proud of that.
Sure.
And so our Sacramento values of inclusivity and welcome really shine through. For example, in August of 2021, when the US military pulled out of Afghanistan, and can remember the news reports at that time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Our website crashed because so many people reached out wanting to volunteer or help. It was a rough time to fix a website crash.
Yes.
But that to me is just shows how much our community shares our values of welcome.
Boy, does that ever speak volumes to the number
Hmm.
of people either in those communities
Hmm.
or interest and support.
Yeah.
That's it's kind of a compliment.
Hmm.
It's not something you want to have happen, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, it's really
Yeah.
interesting to think that there was that much interest and support.
Yeah.
And I know even Sacramento State, fourth largest or fourth most diverse
Hmm.
university in the country.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Let me ask scope of service or geography of
Sure.
service. How far do you go? What is your reach?
So our main office is in the Arden Arcade area in Sacramento. We've
Pretty centrally located.
yeah, we've recently opened a satellite office in Yuba City, where we
Okay.
have a small staff up there as well.
And I was going to say, that's why I
Yeah,
was asking.
yeah,
Our Sikh community
hmm
is, if I'm not mistaken, the
the
largest in the
largest
country.
in the country up in
Yeah.
that area. Absolutely, yeah. And we've actually seen Over the past, I mean, I don't know that I have good data on this, but my, gut sense is over the past 7 or 8 years, more and more Afghans moving up to that area as
Hmm.
well. I like to say that when I first started doing this work, there was not a single Afghan grocery store in Yuba City. Then they got one Afghan grocery store. Now they have two. So if that's a symbol of
Sure.
how many Afghans are up there, but our clients come to us from the greater Sacramento region, Yolo County, Sacramento County, that area.
How far south do you go?
So we have a partnership with another community-based organization that is providing some support in Modesto, but our staff are really here in Sacramento area.
Hmm. We touched on collaboration a little bit earlier, but what organizations do you find yourself working most with?
Yeah. So I like to think of this as sort of a Venn diagram with a couple of different circles, right?
Yeah.
There's what do we do well? What does our community need? And where are the gaps of what other folks are either not providing or not meeting the full need? If our community needs some sort of support, but someone else is already providing it, it makes a lot more sense for us to collaborate and partner and refer each other
That is
clients.
so refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
And it's the purpose of all of our nonprofits.
Hmm.
Don't silo,
Absolutely.
leverage the strengths
Hmm.
of each of the organizations.
Hmm. It's challenging. I mean, in this field, we're collaborators one day and we're competitors the next when we're going after the
Hmm.
same grant. But you know what? This work matters. I'm a big believer that our pie is large enough for everyone. And you may win the grant tomorrow, but I might win it the next day. And there's no reason why we shouldn't collaborate.
And I would say there's nothing to stop organizations from
Hmm.
co-applications,
Absolutely.
which I'm hearing more and more of.
Hmm.
Great, because then it sustains both of you
Hmm.
and you're forced
Hmm.
to work together.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
certainly one of the goals of the program is we come in contact with so many different people and surprisingly to me, same county,
Hmm.
same service.
Yeah.
Well, of course, no, don't.
Yeah.
And how could you not?
I know.
And you're both big
I
organizations
know.
even in
I
some
know.
cases.
I
So
know.
it's amazing the opportunities that we do have. And
Hmm.
I think that's where organizations like Impact Foundry and
Hmm.
the Community Regional Foundation
Hmm.
really support all of it
Yeah.
in a positive way. We'll be back with more with Jessie Mabry from Opening Doors right after these messages from the people who make this program possible. I was in the media business for over 35 years and had the great privilege of working with Runyon Saltzman, RSE, Marketing, Advertising, and Public Relations. We collaborated on many different campaigns, but their commitment to the nonprofit sector hasn't changed since their founder, Gene Runyon, started the agency. Over many years and many campaigns, Runyon Saltzman has been committed to improving lives by tackling California's most challenging issues. Guided by research-informed strategies and insightful, creative solutions, RSE develops innovative communications campaigns that raise awareness, educate, and reduce stigma in diverse communities throughout our state and beyond. To learn more about RSE, visit rs-e.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com. Let's talk a little bit about money.
All right.
How are you funded? And you're a pretty good sized operation at around $10 million
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, that's correct. So we are overwhelmingly funded by government grants, over 90%. We do.
Multi-year?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, there's
Good.
a real mix. So for, I given the type of work that we do, human services work, we'll probably always have a significant chunk of our budget from government.
Mhm.
So when this is very specific to our work and the services that we provide, but I think of revenue diversity as looking at some federal, some state, some county, and then even within the state and the federal, looking at getting funding from different departments.
Which is smart because it gives you a buffer when one dries up and then the
Exactly.
other will balance itself out.
Exactly.
What are you seeing in terms of the anticipation going forward near term?
Well, given the kind of work that we do, we are incredibly impacted by changes at a national level. Um, it's hard to explain this without getting too far into the jargon. So
Right.
if I try to give an explanation and you need me to,
High level.
yeah, just ask me to start again. Um, the Refugee Act of 1980 defines the refugee resettlement process. And part of that process is that at the end of every September, the president sets what's called a presidential determination, which is essentially a ceiling of how many refugees can come into the United
Mhm.
States. Um, it's a ceiling, not a floor.
And is there a designation, just so I'm clear,
Mhm.
immigrants versus refugees?
So, immigrants and refugees are two completely different pathways to get to the US.
Non-synonymous.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're not non-synonymous is a
good,
good word for it.
good.
Um, and, we've saw in the last administration that the ceiling for refugee admissions was much, much lower than
Mhm.
it is under this administration. So we are watching carefully the impacts of the next election because that's going to lead directly to how many refugees can come into our country. And, um, you know, essentially our funding will be impacted by that in
Sure.
one way or another.
Yeah, more
Hmm.
and more, less, less.
Hmm.
If money were no object,
Hmm.
what would the organization look like?
If money were no object, so I'm going to do another one where I'm going to try not to get too jargony.
You did fine last
All
time.
right.
Actually helpful.
Thank you. So you asked a question about, immigrant versus refugee.
Mhm.
There are many different pathways to come into the US. And one is the refugee resettlement pathway. In order to become a refugee, someone has to be fleeing a well founded fear of persecution because of their membership in a particular social class. That's a legal definition.
Mhm.
So, a particular social class could be an ethnic minority, it could be a member of a political party, that
Could be
sort
a
of thing.
woman.
Could be a woman, depending
Mhm.
on the context. Um, by the time a refugee arrives in the United States, they've gone through an extensive, sometimes 4 or 5 year long vetting and screening process. One of the things,
And I'm gonna stop you just for a second there because I think that's important for everybody to understand in this refugee process.
mhm,
This is not an illegal immigrant
mm-mm,
crashing through the border.
mm-mm,
This is a well-vetted,
mhm,
as you said,
yeah,
could be 5 years
yeah,
of effort
yeah,
to get here.
yeah,
There's a full intent to get here. There's a
mhm,
want to get here. There's a
mhm,
need and a possible familial connection
mhm,
here.
yeah. Refugees are actually the most highly vetted traveler to the United States out of all the different kinds of travelers that you might have:
Mhm.
student visas, tourist visas, etc.
And so I cut you off when you were
Mhm.
explaining the 5-year process.
Yeah, well, so I can, this is sort of like a piece to be cut out. I could either go more in depth on the refugee process or I could contrast it to the asylum seeking process. And that gets back to what would I do if I had all the money I wanted? Because some of those.
Go there.
Okay.
You can touch on both in that
Okay.
way. Back to all the money.
Okay. So in comparison to refugees, asylum seekers would be folks that get to the United States and claim asylum upon entry. This is often folks don't understand this, but there is only one way to claim asylum in the US, and you have to be at a port of entry. That's, for most, that's going to be at the southern border, but it could be a Chinese student gets a student visa and then flies into San Francisco airport. And as he's passing Customs and Border Patrol, makes a claim for political asylum, for
Mm.
example.
Mhm.
So it is it is legally not possible to claim asylum outside of the United States.
Oh,
Yes.
very helpful to know.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah. Um, Once someone claims asylum at the border, there is a very low bar, what is called a credible fear interview. They're not trying to actually determine all the facts, but just get a sense of, is this a credible asylum
Mhm.
claim? And then what typically happens is that then the individual is what's called paroled into the country and then waits for their asylum hearing in court. This also can be a multi-year process, 3, 4, 5, sometimes even more years.
Okay. And they're here.
And they're here.
Got it.
100
They can work.
180 days after they apply for asylum, they can apply for work authorization.
Perfect.
Um, the basis for asylum is the same as the basis for refugee status, a well-founded fear of persecution because of their membership in a particular social class. It's really about, where does someone make the claim of that persecution?
So refugee starts
Overseas.
in home country.
Mhm.
Asylum starts here.
Exactly.
Wonderful
Yeah.
explanation. So now you got all the money in the world.
So there are more resources available to the refugee population than to the asylum seeking population. This is in that period of time when they've made the claim of asylum, but before it's been adjudicated in court.
Okay.
And for lots of various different reasons, there are less public resources and we have less grant resources to serve those populations. That's an area that I think really needs some significant support. Even just helping people get to that 180-day period.
That's 6 months of doing what?
Well, exactly.
It's not a vacation.
Yeah, and there's, it's what we see is that folks, because we try to do what we can with the limited resources that we have, but it is limited.
Mhm.
So we're not able to help as many people as need the support. But what we see are that these asylum seekers that come to our communities, they want to keep their families safe. That's why they've fled El
Wherever.
Salvador,
Right.
wherever they've come from.
Venezuela.
Yeah. And they need targeted short-term support. Once they can get a job, they are off and running, and they don't really need much support after that. So
Mhm.
if we had unlimited resources, I'd love to be able to extend the services that we currently provide to refugees to asylum seekers as well. I think another piece for us to think about in terms of unlimited resources is, really what we need is flexible, unrestricted general operating funds. Because of the nature of our work, we are pretty consistently responding very quickly to outside factors that are beyond our control.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's a bomb at the gate of the Kabul airport, and all of a sudden we see those numbers go right up. Or Russia invades Ukraine, or whatever it
Sure.
is, and they end up having really significant impacts on our work. If we have a multi-year grant with specific allowable activities that was set before Russia invades Ukraine, we're not able to use those resources to respond in a timely manner.
Oh, why is that?
Because grant contracts are written as if
Oh, and you have to fulfill
you have to fulfill
the specifics
the
of the grant.
specifics of the grant.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's gotta be frustrating sometimes when you know you've got the money and you can't use it for a particular application.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a great segue.
Hmm.
Now we're off the yellow brick road and we're back into reality. You know, what is the greatest need?
I think it's that general operating support that allows us to be flexible, in probably in two different ways. Flexible, responding to a crisis faster, frankly, than the government can get up to speed and respond to it. It also allows us to be flexible, and really respond to the whole needs of the individual we're
Mhm.
serving. We may have grant funding, for example, to provide legal representation to someone seeking asylum. But if they're having mental health challenges because of the trauma they've experienced, that can sometimes get in the way of them being a good partner with their attorney for their
Sure.
case. Flexible funding allows us to then get that individual some therapy services or something along those lines.
Volunteers.
Hmm.
How many volunteers do you have?
Yeah, we use volunteers in a couple of different ways, and folks can go to our website to sign up and learn more. But we people can volunteer for support that anyone can do. Picking a refugee family up at the airport and helping transport them, or sometimes, if it's a family of 10, they might have a lot of luggage and we might need two cars to
Right,
get them
right.
to the airport or to the apartment after the airport. We also try to match volunteers with really specific skills to very tailored opportunities. So, for example, we've had a volunteer with some graphic design and marketing experience who's provided some pro bono support to some of our micro entrepreneur clients as well.
Or I'd imagine even vice versa, as somebody comes over
Hmm.
from wherever they come over from who's in that particular field,
Hmm.
the ability to give them comfort to know
Hmm.
that this job is real here too,
Hmm.
and we have the ability to assimilate you into something work of some sort
Yeah.
when the ability or opportunity presents itself.
Hmm.
I just love the elements of everything that's going on. And I'm sure there's frustrations when it gets into some of the more difficult, the legal cases and
Hmm.
uh, the less than just simple home work medical
Hmm.
process where it's abusive situations or trafficking situations, and those
Hmm.
those are a lot more difficult. What's the best way for somebody to get in touch with the organization?
Hmm. They could go to our website, openingdoorsinc.org, and there you can learn about ways to sign up to volunteer, support with a contribution, or any of those sorts of ways to get involved.
And I do love the website. We've got it up in the background here
Thank you.
for the visual side of this thing, but the website has a lot of information on it
Hmm.
and easily navigated
Hmm.
in English. And I'm sure it has have other languages
Hmm.
that it populates in as well.
Hmm.
But it's a testament when you see something like that to say you understand the community you're serving,
Hmm.
and yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
just fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, Jesse, you and your team have incredibly challenging work to do, and you are doing an incredibly great job at doing it.
Thank
Your
you.
passion is palpable. I love you can feel it,
Hmm.
and it's one of the reasons we like to do these in person when we can,
Hmm.
because you don't catch this
Yeah.
off of a screen,
Yeah.
and you don't see it, you don't feel it. It's just a little,
Yeah.
less real.
Yeah.
But what you're doing and the work you're doing, especially in this time, in this
Yeah.
space in our country, is not easy,
Hmm.
but it's got to be so gratifying. And to the communities that you serve, especially our greater Sacramento community,
Hmm.
what a blessing that we've got an organization like this to support those people who really need it, and to find out that we've got one of the largest Afghan
Right.
populations. We know we've got one of the largest Sikh populations. I would imagine that our Slavic
Hmm.
population is
It's very yeah.
huge in terms of
Hmm.
the country. So we continue to be the Sacramento that we are, where we're
Hmm.
one of the top multi-ethnicity cities
Hmm.
in the country.
Yeah.
And it's because of people like you that allow us to get there.
Well, I just want to say that none of this would be possible without the community in Sacramento. And that's, everybody is a part of the welcoming community. You and I, as well as our Afghan or Salvadoran neighbors who are welcoming their family members here. And while there are certainly challenges to this work, something that I think doesn't get enough attention is how much joy is
Mm.
in this work as well. We're talking about families getting reunited. We're talking about parents who are able to secure safety for their children. There is an incredible amount of joy amidst all of the challenges.
Well, and going from mental anguish to
Mhm.
mental health, to the
Mhm.
ability to see that I'm going to be okay. Not only am I going to survive, but I can actually do something and
Mhm.
contribute. And, on that side, we know work is gratifying.
Mhm.
Work is what gives people purpose. You flip that around to where your work is supporting and it's giving back. That's what creates gratitude,
Yeah.
and it's visceral.
Yeah.
So thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much for having me.
happy to have been able to share these stories.
Thanks.
And there's a little bit of a history lesson here.
Mhm.
So I think people are going to learn some things in a technical way as opposed to
Right.
just a holistic way about the organization.
Mhm. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. If you have a need for the services or products our sponsors offer, please reach out to them. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, Runyon Saltzman Incorporated, RSE, marketing, advertising, and public relations creating integrated communications committed to improving lives, and Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is a production of, is recorded at, and edited by Hear Me Now Studio.